You can make a statement, but that nobody saw anybody specifically making the statement. They just read out these little press releases.
Every single time something was to surface, which it will, they be apologizing every single day.
I really don't understand the theory behind it, to be honest.
I wouldn't not give Jackie Stewart or Bernie Eccleston or Nelson Piquet or any of these other people less of a platform. You go after them, make them change how the product is presented. Otherwise, if we don't, then we deserve what we get.
The very interesting PK that was in the news last week, and I think we'd be remiss if we've had the caliber of guests we had on today, Malik and Jay, and we didn't discuss this. And it pretty much is the aftermath of the Nelson PK scandal, and on top of that as well, I guess we could tie that into it too, because it just be Red Bull really.
Unfortunately, this is the moment where I have to go. So.
Jay, no!
My kids have arrived home from school. I have to go and get them settled in. So, and I had so much to say about Nelson Piquet as well, but you'll never know. You'll never know.
Man, we'll have to get you on for another episode.
So if anyone wants to know, I think they should check out at Winter Spice, and it's all there. But anyway, it's been great chatting, and I have to leave, and I'm really sorry to cut it short. But yeah, next time.
No worries at all, Jay. Well, thank you for tapping.
Be safe, Big Jay. Yeah. Piss somebody off tonight, please.
I will try.
Pretty, please.
Nice one. See you later.
See you, man.
Jay. Thank you. Well, Georgina, Malik, I've still got my people here in the building with me, so I can ask you two, and well, not Jay, but I'm sure we'll get Jay at some other stage as well. What's your take been on how Red Bull have handled the very racial comments that we've seen arise from one of their academy drivers, and then basically a driver that has a claim in F1 and also is basically the father of the girlfriend of the reigning Asterix world champion. Georgina, Malik, what's your take been on Red Bull's response? Has it been sufficient enough? And where do you guys stand on just racism in Formula One and the use of the N-word by these people and folks?
Ladies first.
I think Malik has a lot to say. And he made really good points regarding all these issues recently on a Twitter space, which, well, 99% people didn't understand. But here's the thing. When it comes to Red Bull, they did take good actions regarding the young drivers issue. They released a statement. They said they are going to suspend him and they don't tolerate racism and this and that. But afterwards, when Nelson Piquet came at, the video came out, though it was done last year, right? It's resurfaced now, this time, during this period, and everyone was making an issue regarding it, which we should have done last year as well if we were aware of it. But now we are making an issue about it. We are trying to raise the voices, and then suddenly FIA released a statement. Mercedes did, McLaren did, Ferrari did, Aston Martin, even they did. But recently during an interview on Sky with Horner, when he was asked why they didn't release a statement, what he said was, we had a recent issue, an incident regarding the young driver, and they have already released a statement. So he didn't think that it's necessary for them to release another statement regarding the same thing. And others were saying regarding Red Bull that Nelson Piquet has nothing to do with Red Bull, so why should they even release a statement? Well, honey, McLaren has nothing to do with Nelson Piquet at all. So why did they release a statement then? The thing is, like, when it comes to Red Bull, I don't know why they are like holding back under these racism issues when it comes to Lewis Hamilton. Because last year, when the robbery went down, we saw another post on Instagram from one of the staff at the garage, with the same issue with the racism post, but they never even intended to do anything regarding it. But when it comes to McLaren, at least they went. I think they started an investigation regarding that lady who started doing all these weird posts and comments regarding Louise and all. So there's a lack of communication, and there's a lack of, I don't know, man. Red Bull is lacking a lot. Okay, 'Cause, especially they need to have a good PR team because they suck at it. Because they keep on showing what their true nature is when it comes to Lewis Hamilton, and which is not a good thing. And I just saw recently a tweet early in the morning from Max Verstappen's dad, him saying that his son has scores to settle with Luis still. And if it's about scores, then Luis is the one who's having scores to settle with Max and the rest of the team at Red Bull, because he's the one who got robbed, but he's not making an issue regarding it. But the least thing that they could have said was releasing a statement regarding the racial issues, because actions do speak louder than words, and no the actions, no the words are coming from Red Bull, and which is actually a shame, because Red Bull is one of the few greatest companies that I've seen from the business side, because they are not vehicle manufacturers. They're just a small, they used to be a small these energy drink manufacturing company, and now they are in Formula One, being one of the biggest teams in the world. They are partnering with other sports like surfing and whatnot. So as a team like that, it's powerful to see what they're doing and what they're not doing, and what they're not doing is not right. I really don't understand the theory behind it, to be honest. Malik, do you have anything? Because I'm actually lost
Well, I
of
mean,
words when it comes to
yeah,
Red Bull.
no, and I totally I get the point of view and the perspective that you're coming from.
Yeah,
So I mean, Red Bull. I mean, we also got to understand that we're going to be biased. Okay, we're admittedly Lewis fans, right?
yeah,
I'm a Lewis fan. Well, I am more a Lewis fan than I am a Formula One fan, and then a whole bunch of other stuff, and then a Mercedes fan. But that's just part of sports and team sports, and where your loyalties lie. Like, I'm a Liverpool guy, but I don't count the time when Bill Shankly was the coach, when that's everybody looks at Liverpool's glory as their glory years, right? Other than the 80s and stuff. I don't count that time frame because he absolutely refused to have any black players, right? And they were basically the Boston Red Sox, which oddly enough they owned them, of the Premier League. They were the last Premier League team to have a black player. So I was like, screw those guys, right? But that's my team. And so, that's that. So when Red Bull made their statement, I understood the point that they were trying to make. It was terrible. I understood it. Most people just, the mental gymnastics that they tried to go through was basically to say, listen, although it was 25 minutes ago when we made this other statement about VIPs and all of that, and as uncomfortable as it might be for any company or brand or whatever to have to make that about one of their own people, the fact that we got rid of him as an action for doing that shows that we don't want to just give lip service, that we actually act. Therefore, we can make a differentiation between a person that's on that we do have some kind of control or dominion over because he was contracted with them, versus a person whose daughter, there's no good way or bad way to say it, whose daughter is the connection to Nelson Piquet through our last two drivers, right? Which people forget, right? she was, dating Kafia. They have a kid. Now she's dating the dude who replaced Kafia in one, more ways than one, I guess. So whether she's a part of their developmental program or I don't know, but that's her involvement. But I can understand what and why they did it. But, when we're talking about this stuff, we have to put it in its correct perspective. Okay. Yeah, McLaren made a statement. Yeah, some of the individual, I think the best statement was probably from Pierre Gasly, right? When he had his little story where he basically said, you can't, you can't like the culture and not support the people, right? If that was directed towards her. I think that was probably the best statement out of anything. But I look at all these different people and who made a statement and who didn't make a statement. And then I say, okay, well, yeah, let's go ahead and talk about the action speaking louder than words. And Lewis did make a really, really good point when he said that, you have some of these companies that have a PR department and they automatically wheel out this thing in like no time flat because we assume that this is going to come up at some point again and again and again. But then I go back and I say, okay, well, we can have the Ignite, we can have the Hamilton Commission, and they can all, and Christian Horner wanted to make sure that he said, yeah, and we're a part of that. Okay. But Mercedes doesn't have any diversity in their pit crew. The only one technically that I've ever seen was Red Bull, and that's just that one brother and stuff, right? Which he's been there for a couple of years. That's all. McLaren doesn't have anything. Whether they make a statement or not, actions do in fact, speak louder than words, right? How do these people apply? What are, because Mercedes has the worst pit crew in the world. Let's say Bubba Wallace here, NASCAR. He's got a couple of guys that played, football at HBCUs. So they lifted weights and they did all this other stuff, and they're quick on their feet and the whole nine. And that's what you need to be able to be in a pit crew. How come you don't reach out to some of these people that have that kind of pedigree and strength and all this other stuff to say, hey, look, you know what? We need some guys that are fast like that. Do you think you can come over? They're not doing that search in some of the other series for pit crews because maybe they get paid more to do the stuff. And, so there's ways to rectify that. And sometimes if diversity and inclusion is a part of what you're trying to accomplish, you'll go out of your way to do that. Is Mercedes doing that? Okay, well, we can only base that off of what we've seen. Is only Lewis being there enough for all of us? Not for me. So if Mercedes makes a statement, I'm like, all right, well, yeah, Mercedes is making a statement, but they're not doing any of the stuff. I can sign on to anything and say that I did X, Y, and Z. Did Mohammed bin, I don't want to call him Ben Salman, but Suleiman, MBS, which sucks too. But when MBS he hasn't done anything. I don't know if the F1's boss himself, you can make a statement, but nobody saw anybody specifically making the statement. They just read out these little press releases. Well, that doesn't mean shit. That could be somebody at the factory that wrote that. It has nothing to do with the teams other than they're under the same umbrella. So I think at many times we get caught up in the who said what and who mentioned it and all this other stuff. And that seemingly satisfies us, but it doesn't satisfy me, right? To me, it doesn't mean anything. And we have to be able to even hold Lewis's feet to the fire. Does he support any of the up and coming, whatever? Is he trying to support any, drivers from, say, China or Sri Lanka or any of these other places? I've never seen that, right? All I know is him. So, when we're talking about this, we have to talk about it in its entirety. We can't just nitpick what is fine and what's not fine simply because we like this person or that company just happened to have hired this guy over all these years, but probably still made him feel like shit over the same 8-9 years. And he just kind of brushed it off because that's what he's had to do. You know what I'm saying? Being, one of the only Black family law attorneys in South Florida, which oddly enough in 2022, that's still the case. There's not very many Black male family law attorneys and even less guardian ad litems. I might be one of 3 in the entire state of Florida. Black male guardian ad litem attorneys in the entire state of Florida. There's not very many. They're always trying to find us. And so, but when, they know, but they're not looking for us either. You know what I'm saying? They're not reaching out to try to recruit us or any of this other stuff. So I was like, so, we got to be careful of that kind of stuff. And then if we're still watching this, which is the point that I was making on the spaces, if we're still watching this and we're complaining and whining and we're not holding anybody's feet to the fire, then after a while it becomes our fault because we didn't actually hold any of these people's feet to the fire. And if it doesn't matter what they do, we're still going to be there and watch and support and all this other stuff, then we should shut up about it because we are enabling it to continue by not taking any substantive action. So that's my opinion. But everybody got all bent out of shape, the other day, and it's like, oh, well, you're shooting down everything because I said, if that doesn't work, then what? Well, then we'll do this. Well, you have done that. And if that doesn't work, then what? Well, we're trying to come up with answers. Like, no, you're trying to relive Abu Dhabi all over again, nitpicking, situations and stuff like that. And that shit gets tired. It's stupid. Hold everybody's feet to the fire, including Lewis, including Mercedes. None of those actions that have taken place that we assume are doing anything, are working. And so at this point, we're allowing that to continue to happen in the way that it's happening, and we're still there. So they have no incentive to make any kinds of changes because we're not going anywhere. So that's my thing. And and we all live in a Western country other than Georgina. We all live in the West. People that are listening pretty much live in the West. So we've all lived this our entire lives. And if we're not doing anything ourselves in our own lives to get other people, our neighbors, the Karens and all that stuff to stop doing this shit, then why should we expect these big ass companies in Formula One to change what we're not willing to do in our own lives? Sometimes you got to knock a motherfucker out. Just saying, sometimes you got to do it.
Yeah, that's true, Malik, and I agree. There's a point where, of course, you look at words and what gestures people make, but like you mentioned too, it's the long-term action, and like you said, it's not just Red Bull. Although, like, you could definitely center Red Bull for having a lot more of these reoccurring issues come up, and kind of my 2 pence on their position with the apology or like not apologizing the second time is I just feel that Red Bull have lots of skeletons underneath the closet that still haven't really surfaced yet. So, like Christian mentioned, I think he's even acknowledged that there is a problem there. And if they were to release a statement every single time something was to surface, which it will, they be apologizing every single day, which is not good for their reputation. But of course, they need to be accountable for in that sense too. But I think Lewis touched on something as well, which I wanted to kind of bring forward to the table as well. And he's just said, these people like Nelson Piquet, and it's not necessarily an age thing. It's not just because he's old, because there's old people out there that have more sense, more understanding of what's happening around the world, and they're more appreciative of what's happening. But it's these narrow-minded people like Nelson Piquet, which has always been controversial. He's always been very disrespectful. I think on the same platform, he was saying, well, thankfully I'm alive, but Senna's dead, but that's on him, which is crazy because Senna's one of the most loved people in the sports, and he mentioned something about Keke Rosberg as well, saying that he's shit, which again, he's entitled to his opinion. But again, this is the sort of individual, is going to have that kind of like response. So if people were to give these people less attention and less like clicks and less engagement, nothing they ever say would actually have any like relevance and it wouldn't stick.
But let me push back on you for just a second though.
Go for it.
I wouldn't necessarily. We have this idea. I'm 48. How old are you?
26.
26 whole years old. You are younger than my daughter. Okay. Georgina, how old are you?
I'm 34.
34. Okay. You are old as dirt. Okay. So people have this idea, and you're 26. So 26, you were born in, oh my gosh, 95, right? Good Lord. I would already graduated high school like years before. I was like, good Lord, it's like 1995. What happened in 1995?
Denzel was born.
Denzel was born. All right. In fact, okay, the
Peak of humanity.
Serbian war was going. The Serbian war was going on. Okay, I almost went over there to go fight in that. That's a completely different set of different story. But I almost went over there to go fight that. But so people have this idea that, okay, well, things are getting more racist and all this other stuff. Like, no, it hasn't. It was just people weren't. It wasn't something that could be openly, expressed like it was, 30 years prior, 25 years prior, which is, prior to 1995, right? Back in the 70s and 60s, okay, where people could just do it and say it openly and it wasn't, as taboo. And so now it kind of is, because all of these countries have gone right wing because they're tired of not being able to do it. It's not that it's more, it's just people they don't feel ashamed to do it. I wouldn't not give Jackie Stewart or Bernie Eccleston or Nelson PK or any of these other people less of a platform. I would give them the exact platform that they asked for, but in the context of today. Jackie or Bernie, I'll just say Bernie or even Nelson, you want to say all of this stuff and this, that, and the other thing. So let me ask you this. Do you think that calling him that, makes you look good? Well, what do you mean? Well, I'm talking about racing. I understand that, but we're also talking about what you said and then challenging him on that. And then Jackie Stewart saying, why would you think he should retire, Jackie? Why do you, or Bernie, why do you think this, or all these other, people that are saying all this stuff? You go at them and how they are and who they are and the things that they said and how that's shitty. If you're willing to go after comics over a joke that they told 20, 30 years ago, then how come you can't go after a Jackie Stewart or any of these other people for something that they said today based upon a sentiment that may have existed 20 or 30 years ago? That they just, they surround themselves with those people. And they assume, because no one's ever pushed back, that they still can around those same people. You're only going to say the shit that you can say around people that you think that you can get away with, and you just forgot that, you were on camera or something like that. It's like a very shy person in one of these spaces, a really, really shy person who normally doesn't speak, but as soon as they finally say something and they realize that they didn't die, you can't shut them the fuck up, and they keep trying to monopolize everything, right? Yeah. We all know we all know those people. And so you, Jackie, why do you keep saying Red Bull? Why does it always seem like these racist incidents always involve you? Well, what do you mean? Well, I understand you had Yuri Vips, and yeah, you took a stance that fired him, and good on you. But you guys do have a connection to Nelson PK, and whether you guys needed to make a statement or not, you deliberately chose not to. Now, you may have been fine with the backlash, but you do realize that does make you seem like that you're totally fine with this type of behavior. You're not really fine with this type of behavior, are you? Right? You know what I'm saying? You give them that, that stuff. McLaren, you made this statement about this and that and the whole nine. And you know what, Zach? I understand that you're probably the only team principal that is, in fact, supporting a young driver of color, because he is, right? I don't like his ass at all, but he is. I can't remember the young kid who's driving in. And maybe you guys know who I'm talking about. I don't know his name.
The F4 driver. Yeah.
Right. The little young kid. Right. And Zach Brown talks about him quite often. Toto doesn't. Right? Seidel doesn't. Well, I mean, Seidel is with McLaren also, right? So not Seidel, but Vasseur, he doesn't. None of the other guys have that. No one said anything about that. Lewis isn't. Right? And so Lewis isn't grooming his replacement that we know of. So we have to not pick favors and call it all out and call it as it is. But you look at these PKs, give them the damn attention. Nelson PK, who repeatedly refers to, whenever you interview him, Nelson PK, who referred to Lewis Hamilton as blah blah blah. What do you think about blah blah blah? And you're like, he doesn't want to get introduced as that. But guess what? That's what we should, refer him to. And at that point, he'll probably like, yeah, let me go ahead and back on out of here, because if they're always going to associate me with that, and I know that that's bad and that's wrong, I don't want to be seen as that person. And then they just disappear. See what I'm saying? Bernie Eccleston might not. Bernie Eccleston might not. He's like a meth dealer's dream.
World. Yeah.
I mean, see what I'm saying? So you give them that attention that they want, but you don't give them the type of attention that they want. Mm-hmm. As long as you're not lying, you're not defaming them and stuff like that. You say, hey, listen, hey, Bernie Eccleston, who is a POS, how do you feel about the new rules? Wait a second, did you just refer to me as Bernie Eccleston, the person who's a POS? Yeah, because you are. How do you feel about this new rules change? Well, wait a second, let's go back to the other thing. Well, no, let's talk about what we're talking about. I'm asking you. Well, why would you refer to me as a POS? Well, you haven't done anything to stop being a POS, so, that's how we know you. So here you go. You know what I'm saying? And at that point, he's like, man, fuck this. I don't want to come around that anymore. All right, we'll see you. That's how you get rid of those people. But, the journalists that we have suck, right? Do we then keep going after the people who we know are not going to change? They're not going to change. So then you go after the people that are continuously asking them, because they know that it's going to get some eyes and all this other stuff. True. Right? You go after them, make them change how the product is presented. Otherwise, if we don't, then we deserve what we get. They only do it because we are still there. We all hate Sky. We hate Paul DeResta. Why Naomi Schiff hasn't been on there since all the other stuff, I have no idea, unless she herself quit. But it's like they go after her and then they relegate her to off camera. I don't know if anybody's noticed that. Nobody's even said anything about that. You know what I'm saying? And so whose fault is that? That's all of our fault. And after a while, they have no incentive to bring her back if we're not demanding that she be restored to wherever she's at. Mm-hmm. It's our responsibility. It's only on TV to show us because we exist. If we're not there, which interferes with the money, then, or threaten it, then they have no incentive to change. The only reason why they did all the stuff that they did earlier in this year is because they thought Lewis was going to leave and we were going to leave. Mm-hmm. They just want to get the season started. Once the season started, we didn't go. Lewis said, I'm staying. And then they went right back to the same fuckery that they've always been doing.
Sure.
Right? Ratings have shot up because he's back on top, or not really on top, but he's back in the front. He's gotten stuff around his name. I guarantee you their marketing is going to change a little bit, because they had a chance where they were like, Lewis isn't winning, but Lewis is busting ass and the support for him is even greater. They're going to piggyback that. Mm-hmm. There's no more of the gold shoes, #1 plate max stuff at the beginning of the season. It's all, you know what I'm saying? Have you not noticed that either? None of that shit's there. It's all been, Mercedes is this, that, and the other, because people respond to that. They now realize that is where all the power is basically behind him. That's the reason why they're getting $95 million from ESPN, not $5 million, because Lewis didn't leave and we didn't either. Mm-hmm. Right? We could very easily turn that into a $90 million overpayment overnight for one race or two races. And it's not a boycott, because you have to be serious about it. But a lot of people just aren't. A lot of people aren't. And we only, at some point, we have to take our own part of the responsibility as to why things are the way they are. Black people, we still face a lot of shit in all these different countries because we never kicked that ass afterwards. Mm-hmm. Nobody fears an ass whooping. Therefore, they keep doing it. Those people are just going to march and we will overcome and all this other shit. So we can just keep shooting at them and killing them and doing all this other stuff. Every once in a while, you're like, screw that. You know what I'm saying? And so the fear of change is what it is, or the fear, FOMO. That's what it is. Fear of missing out. And that's what we have, and that's what they have. But they don't fear us leaving, but we fear missing out. And so therefore, we end up going without. and that's our fault. I don't want to leave either, but you got to at least make the other side think that you're possibly going to go,
And
and
like you
then
mentioned
be
earlier,
serious.
yeah, which I think is
But
a possibility. Because like sorry to cut you there as well, Malik. Like
no,
there
go,
are
go,
other
go.
series out there as well, you know, and like whilst they might not give us certain things that F1 gives us, a lot of people have been asking me recently, man, how do you manage to watch like the GT3 racing? How do you manage to watch IndyCar? Like, how do you manage to watch all these disciplines? And I just say to them, it's just because it's just a better product in terms of actually, you know, the mechanics of racing and just seeing people go against each other and stuff like that. It's F1 without the insistent bullcrap from, you know, the likes of a Christian Horner or the likes of like a Nelson Piquet or the likes, you know, of the academy drivers or the likes of a Bernie Eccleston, you know? So I think you're definitely right in that sense as well, Malik, because we have the power, but it's for us to understand that power and for us to commit to using it in the correct ways and not
It,
just
it,
staying in
it's a
one
bunch of
way.
kids. It's a bunch of kids who, and I'm gonna cut you off, but folks that are your generation, you've never known, for the most part, you've never known FaceTime or never not known FaceTime or Skype, right? When we were kids, man, the only, we had the old phones with the long cord that you had to drag all around the house and stuff like that, right? I know you're saying, right? And when we were kids, we used to always, man, I cannot wait till they have phones, that video phones, as we call them, video phones. We cannot wait till they have video phones. Man, that's gonna be so dope. And you can blah, blah, blah. Now it's like we have them. It's like, dude, I'm just gonna, I don't even want to see you. I don't want to even talk to you. Right. But, and so you have all of the things that we were dying to have. And now it's just like, not a big deal. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, that's the frustrating. It's frustrating and it's funny because, oh my God, I wish I was 26. Man, I'd look
What's
crazy.
The first thing you do?
What's the what?
What's the first thing you would do?
If I was 26 in 2022?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, my stomach would probably be grumbling because I'd be broke as shit because everything costs so damn much.
There is that.
Yeah. Well, if all things were equal, but I was 26, I'd probably get beat up by my little girl because she'd be older than me. But, oh my gosh. I don't know. I honestly do not know because I don't know. I don't know. I've never had anybody ask me that. What would I do if I were, basically 25, 26 today with all of the stuff that we have today? I would probably be just as I don't know. It depends on my parents. If I didn't have supportive parents. If I had supportive parents, I could probably, I don't know, I'd probably be a billionaire in about 18 months. If I still knew all of the stuff that I know, but I was only 26 and, let's say, same life, same all this other stuff, had the same whatever, I'm just 26, everything else is the same. Oh yeah, I'd be a billionaire in about 18 months. Easily.
Be trading that.
And it wouldn't be from like TikTok videos and none of that nonsense. Yeah. The 19th month, I probably would get assassinated by some hit squad somewhere. But that first 18, but that 18th month, I'd be like, hell's yeah. No, yeah. If I know this, if I have all of the knowledge that I had for these 48, but I'm only 26, oh yeah, hands down. Easily. There is some age bias and stuff like that as you get older,
Sure.
with, being able to do certain things and stuff like that. But with the communication, access to communications that we have, internet type stuff that we have, travel, all that stuff, the ability to touch different continents quickly, as opposed to, what we had like 80s and 90s and stuff like that. 80s, I was a kid. 90s, early 2000s, even early 2000s up to maybe 2003. Okay. Oh yeah. Good Lord. Yeah. And that's with a person that doesn't know how to code, but I know got people for that, for my healthcare company. But oh yeah, easily. If I had supportive parents, I'd be one now.
Oh, I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but yeah, I'm just saying. Oh,
well, it sucks. No, having I'm not the only one, but yeah, having a bad support system does in fact screw you up. I had other support systems, but they didn't have, I wasn't their kids, so it's the only reason why I'm where I am. But if my own folks were, oh yeah, all day. Hands and people, and the bad part is I can say that because I can, have time I'm goofing around and stuff like that, being funny and say, oh yeah, I'm, the smartest person in the world and stuff like that. And I'm not. But my friends would probably tell you that of the folks that they know, bar two other guys, because they actually did, and they actually did make some money. Barring maybe those other two, they would probably have assumed that I would be the first person to make $1 billion, lose $1 billion, and make that $1 billion back.
Wow.
Probably within that same 18 months.
Jesus, it's a very erratic 18 months to say the least. But
dude, well, I mean, I'm a risk taker, so
No
I was like,
risk, no reward,
that pit of lava is only 100 feet wide. I can jump that. I'm that idiot.
Oh my days. Well, we need lots of people like that in this world, Malik. So I'm glad that you're here and you're part of our family.
I mean, and then the 20th month, I'd end up going to prison for something probably.
Oh,
but
not in the same cell as R. Kelly, though.
Something I didn't do.
Oh,
but
okay.
but yeah. But like when you deal with all the racism stuff, you just have to make sure that you keep it in the proper context. You can't get bent out of shape all this stuff. I don't know a day that doesn't have it, right?
True.
Like we're on a phone, on the internet. The phone that we're talking on is the product of racism. The internet that we're communicating on, where I live especially, how fast it is or how strong it is or whether you have good access to it or not is all based upon racism. The fact that someone picks up our trash where I stay on Mondays and Thursdays is all a product of racism, because just a mile down the street, they only do it every 10 days. And people don't realize those types of things for just normal city services, city planning, all that other stuff, especially in the US. I don't know how it is over there, but in the US, it's all based on those types of things, right? Where Georgina lives, I'm sure that there's with Sinhalese folks or people of a different faith or religion or whatever. I mean, right now, everybody's all screwed up, what's going on out there, because I've been paying attention to it. But, natural disasters are the only great equalizer for the most part. And then once that natural, disaster goes back, then now you start to figure out, all right, well, who deserves this service more or less? All this other kind of stuff. It returns back to the status quo, natural order, so to speak. So you got to put all that stuff in the correct context. F1 was never, for the first 50, 60 something, it's only been around, 72 years? This is the 73rd year, right? If it started in 1950. So this is the 73rd year. Up until 16 years ago, maybe that 45 minutes with Willie T. Ribb trying to get a test, when he doesn't really even count per se. But for those, it does, but he doesn't. But up until 16 years ago, we were never part of the equation. Anybody that looked like us was watching on the periphery. You know what I'm saying? And so we didn't have to expect any of this other stuff. That one person that went through and fought and made himself up there. Well, was the fight F1 or was the fight on the way up? The fight was worse probably on the way up, because those are all those different gatekeeps and stuff like that. Individual, small, regular, everyday, our neighbors' parents who were putting, Lewis and folks like him through that. Same kids that did, football academies growing up, out there especially. Imagine playing in, what is that, Crowley Town, being in the youth league in Crowley Town, right? I think that's the town. That's the name of the town with the racist coach, right? Well, the super racist coach. I guess the other ones have just regular racist coaches. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Right. So, you know what I mean? Or, Crystal Palace area, or, all of that stuff, an Indian guy trying to be in a cricket league out there. I don't get cricket, but they do. And, and all the nonsense they had to go through just to come up through the ranks. right? F1 is just one spot. It's all the different levels all the way up through it, and nobody's ever talking about those levels all the way through it. You know, what kind of treatment did Lewis get on the way up that Nico didn't, in, you know, being similarly situated?
Yeah.
Nico didn't face all the, you know, the bullshit, and they were the same age on the same team.
Yeah.
You know, but nobody comments on that stuff. And so we talk about all the stuff with F1, the whole nine. It's like, well, let's talk about those developmental leagues. That's where all the stuff is. The college is only bad because the regular school board in the grammar school is bad. That's just, they're creating the natural order. So by the time you get to F1, you're just like, dude, this is how this shit is. I don't even know to, you know, to argue about this kind of treatment anymore because it doesn't look any different. You know, so, you know, we have to not minimize the small stuff and only go for the big things. No, we got to hammer out the little small things on the way down, make them feel uncomfortable also.
I think that's a fair point, you know, because Lewis talks about it occasionally, but you're right, you know, there would have been a lot of things he's experienced. And I think
that hurts him.
Earlier things.
I think that stuff hurts him way more than what F1 could do. I think he knows, he's very self-aware. I think he knows he has way more power in his position that he's earned now that he is there than he did on the way up. We don't know how many, you know, Desi kids and Asian kids and, you know, or East Asian kids and Black kids, African kids or whatever that have come up through some of these leagues and got gate crashed out of it. I mean, there's 7 and some change billion people on Earth. It's safe to say that a few hundred over these last, say, you know, 73 years have tried. We only know of the one that made it through all of that stuff. What happened to the other ones? Where did it go wrong? So how come we're not attacking that? We're only attacking F1. That's a societal thing. People don't really want to deal with that because they can experience that and they understand they have to burn more calories to get that stuff hammered out. Well, let's just fight it as it relates to Lewis. Well, what about the kid trying to come up? That's why I'm all for people like us creating developmental leagues and stuff like that. I always, you know, fart around with Vincent. I think you guys had Vincent as a guest previously. I can't remember his last name, Vincenzo or whatever. He lives, you know, not too far from me. There is a racetrack that's out here, Palm Beach International Raceway, PBIR. It used to be an IndyCar track and a whole bunch of other stuff. I'm not even sure. I think maybe F1 was out there once. If it was, it would have been in the 70s or 60s or something. But they have a legit track. It's closed now. I'm like, listen, I'm all for, like, say, buying that track and they had karting for kids out there too. Part of it is, you know, needs to be rehab, but other parts are still good. So having it out there and having or buying it and using it as a developmental track for some of these kids in this area, and you have a developmental team, and you know, you do all that stuff. The cards are a couple grand, right? You know, baseball kids and, you know, football parents and stuff like that, they spend that per year on their kid. So you got, you know, a couple grand for the car or cart, right? Scratch and scrape. You know, not everybody can obviously do it, but the ones that can. And then you have a developmental league and stuff like that. And that's how you grow it. And you know, you start young. If you're starting from Lewis, it's too late. He's in his last couple of years. If we're talking about making all these changes for the next that's coming up, well, who's coming up? You're not making the developmental leagues easier for Lewis. You're only talking about the end result. Well, that is what it is. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm all for creating these little leagues and getting these kids in there and following them and pushing them and, you know, supporting or sponsoring a team to help you know what I'm saying? That's what we can do. None of us ever talk about that. So I, you know, posed it to Vincent. I said, Vincent, we need to go about trying to get this track, you know, as if we're balling. You know, I'm not, but as if, or maybe convince the group that bought it before they decide what they're going to do with it. To, you know, hey, listen, can we use this part that is usable for a karting track for this purpose? Yeah, sure. Why not? We can make a little bit of money while we determine how large of a parking lot we want to turn this whole thing into. Sure, why not? You know what I'm saying? That's the things that we can do. If you're wanting to fight all this stuff, then you have to be creative. right? Instead of whining about stuff that you know already exists, that's how things are every single time it is, as if it was the first time. And that shit gets old. It gets old. It gets old. So that's the reason why I always say that if I was 26, I'd be a billionaire, because I'd be able to just, and I still knew all the stuff that I, knew already. I could just cut out all that nonsense. Not that I'm putting it behind me, because I'm remembering it, so I can smack shit out of you with it. But it's not enough to derail me. And I think some of these kids, they get so derailed because like, oh, I gotta go out and tweet it. Like Twitter never hurt anybody. I mean, I wouldn't say hurt. I mean, it's changed some stuff, but it's for those people. Twitter's not real. Whoever, I think it was Dave Chappelle said that Twitter is not. It isn't. It doesn't do a thing. It doesn't replace effort. It's the bare minimum of things that you can possibly do. And so you use it to gather folks to your calling or whatever the case might be. You all have a singular purpose. You go out and you go attack that shit. If it doesn't work, rather you use your spaces to get all the people together, to get all your spices together, and you remix that. So, okay, this is where we went wrong. Okay. We did this. We don't need to rehash any of that stuff, because we obviously know that all of that in that form didn't work. So okay, what did work? Okay, jettison the shit that didn't, take the stuff that did. All right, let's go this direction. All right, ready, break. Go out there, work that play, and you move a couple 2-3 yards again. Move a couple 2-3 yards. If your average is 3.5 yards, guess what? You get a fourth down on the fourth try, right? Or on the third try, excuse me. You only get 4. So if your success is it takes you 3, then you start working better to get 4 yards of play, 5 yards of play, 6 yards of play. By then, shit, we can do whatever we need to. That's the approach that people need to take, even with this racism stuff. Stop sweating all this small stuff. We've done that already. Years before. Some of the people did it before me. All of the stuff that people are trying to do right now has already been tried, and none of it worked. Stop doing the same failed nonsense and stop sweating all the shit that you know is already there. Just do it. Just I'm all for the developmental thing. If there was 10,000 Hamilton fans and you put $2, $3, $4, $5 together, you could sponsor one of these kids to go and do all this other stuff. You saw some success with that, sponsor another one. In addition to what their parents are putting into it also, sure. Right? Lewis is only going to be there for another 2 years, 3 years tops. If you're going to stay in this sport, you invest in the sport, and you invest in the sport that you want to see, not in the bullshit that we already have. If you love the sport. If you don't love the sport, then as soon as he's done, you'll be done. And it doesn't really, and then you look back in hindsight, you were just whining because you could. Because it was the thing to do, because everybody else, was. So that's why when I go to those different spaces and everybody, well, let's start talking about Nelson Piquet, and then, well, yeah, but Abu Dhabi, he was robbed. Okay. Right. Start talking about shit that we can't do anything about.
Yeah. Yeah.
And get stuck on it. I'm still mad about Abu Dhabi. Okay. Well, I'm still mad that I have that my big toenail chipped. I can't do anything about it. It's already chipped. Yeah. Right. So it's just like, okay, what am I going to do now? Keep talking about my chipped toenail? It's not going to make it grow. That's not how they grow. I got to work to it. And I got to take care of the other one. Right. So that's the thing that the young new fans aren't getting. The thing that the young new fans, and somebody said this a couple of days ago, is that they themselves are not putting up with the blatant racism. So they brought that perfect, but they didn't bring any, anything else. And so some of the OGs, listen to some of the OGs. If you don't want to listen to OGs, okay, well then just keep going around in circles. Some of the OGs are stupid. You got to admit, old people have some.
But that's the thing as well, man. Like some of them, they speak from experience, and it's because they've been there themselves. So it's not a case of them just saying it to you because like it sounds good to them or it's musical, but because they can already see a kind of path you're gonna go down, which they've already been down, and
Sure.
they want to try and kind of enlighten you on how you could do things differently. And if they had the opportunity to do it differently, they would have done it maybe the way that they're going to suggest you do it. So I agree,
Correct.
and I think that's a really kind of good bombshell for us to conclude this episode on, because
Sure.
yeah, people do focus a lot of time and energy on things that unfortunately don't change, whether it's better for worse, but we can be more impactful and I think more efficient if we focus on the things that we can influence, the things we can change. And even if that's at a ground level, let's say in the UK, we would call it grassroots level. So rather than just kind of getting it onto F1, more kind of at the go-karting circuits, more at, the F4s, the F3s, the kind of the places where there aren't much media attention or people don't
When's
have
the
so
last
much
time you had
focus.
people fighting and complaining that Jamie Chadwick is not an F2, at least?
That's an on and off one, because you get some people which it's like she should be, and then there's other people which they don't even realize that W Series exists, which is crazy amongst itself too.
Yeah. But I've heard some, well, she should be an F3 because they drive F3 cars and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay. Or she should, if you're not putting her in, if the normal trajectory is F3, F2, F1, and she's an F3, then, okay, put her in F2. And the fact that there's nothing in regular men-dominated F3, F2, or F1, right? Let's just say F3 and F2, or 4 for that matter also. If there's nothing in any of those other ones, then, but you're only trying to change F1? No, the path to F1 is through those other ones, and you're not doing anything. They're flying under the radar. Then you're doing nothing. So, and use Jamie Chadwick. I mean, I've known who she was, but I never really paid attention because I just didn't. But I, invested in some of that this weekend. I was like, shit, she's dope.
She's amazing,
right?
isn't she? She literally whooped everybody.
Right. So I personally do not understand why there isn't as much push behind her to get her into F2 so that she can get into F1. I do believe that an F2 to F1 trajectory is the right trajectory. So I don't think that she should be in an F3 to F3 or the women's series to F3 to F2. She's 24 years old. She's kicking everybody's ass. And if women are the same and all this other stuff, which I believe that they are, right? I can't remember who it was that said, all right, you got women astronauts that are out there kicking ass, but you can't get a woman in an F1 car or an F2 car. That's ridiculous. So put her in F2, what was the old test driver for Marussia? The one that died, that had the one eye and stuff.
Spanish, yeah.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. I can't remember her name just because I'm talking about it. You ever seen her drive? Man, she was better than 10, probably half of the grid that exists right now in F1. And she died 5 years ago, or however long that was. So, and that was then. So yeah, push Jamie Chadwick, get her ass in the F2 so she can get an F1.
It makes sense. It makes sense, Malik. But like you said, I scratch my head sometimes because it's just like, why is it not already
picking and choosing? Picking and choosing. You can't pick and choose. You just can't. And that's where we fall short of the message that we're trying to put out. Is like, okay, well, how or why doesn't it apply in this case? Yeah, we're saying that these people aren't doing the things that they're supposed to be doing, but we're not supporting all these other people over here either. All things being equal. Just because you like that one guy, I don't know Jamie Chadwick. I don't know a whole lot about her. I just, looked into it a little bit more this weekend. I've known who she was for a while, but I didn't really invest a whole lot into it. I'm like, she's dope. I saw her driving. She's dope, right? Kicking ass. And then I was like, oh yeah, her mom or dad or something like that is Indian. It's like, okay, cool. All right, well, regardless, why isn't she in F2 if she's been over here for these last couple of years? Kicking ass. Get her ass in the F2. There's no push to get her in the F2. Now, it might be more because you're in the UK and she's from the UK, but, obviously, US people, we just like the left turn, skull dipping NASCAR stuff out here. So, we're not as cultured as you guys are. But yeah, there should be a ridiculous push. As much push and power behind Lewis should be behind Jamie Chadwick. I don't even know her for the most part.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go tweet it today. I'm gonna go tweet it.
Well, you will, and I will as well, man, because it's such a good point. I think you're right. Just we do have to kind of take a look at ourselves as well and reevaluate, because we're not the perfect picture either. Although
Yeah.
ironically trying to aim for the perfect picture. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of truth. There's so much truth. But on that
Yeah.
note, Malik, I'm gonna let you have the final note before we end this episode. Anything
Okay.
recently that it's come up that you wanted to speak about, or is there anything that you're working on, like that we can?
Nah, I mean, I'm doing this stuff with our healthcare company. We are, they're trying to change a lot of the laws out here to prevent having another civil war and stuff like that. Dude, it's so ridiculous out here.
Oh, man.
It's stupid. But man, just everybody's. I mean, it's a day off for us today, so stop being an asshole to everybody. Hamilton fans, enjoy the weekend, enjoy next weekend, which obviously you enjoyed last weekend. Enjoy next weekend. Georgie, we'll talk about this offline, but I'm keeping an eye on Georgie's neighborhood because it's scaring me a little bit. The UK can't wait till Liverpool starts playing again.
Man, we're just eating
I
crumpets,
can go all over
man.
the place with that.
We're just eating crumpets and finding a way to get Boris Johnson out of power, man, because that guy survived. That's probably a next episode. Just like, it's just why, like, he's there.
Bo
No matter what
Jizzy,
happens.
Bojo.
Just
I like Bojo.
Man, that guy's a nightmare. But we'll discuss that on an episode. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hopefully Scotland leaves. So I'm all for breaking it up. And Wales, all 7 of the people that are there.
And the sheep too. Never forget the sheep in Wales.
Leave that alone. I'll leave that alone.
Oh, but Malik, it's been legendary as always.
It was great talking, guys. And don't kill anybody.
Yeah,
don't stab anybody. Don't stab anybody. You guys can't shoot anybody. Don't stab anybody.
we try not to in London, but of course, huge shout out to you and shout out to Georgina as well. Shout out to the Stripping the Dipping Nation as well for tuning in for another legendary episode. It's great when we can get Malik on and we can just chop it up. It doesn't have to be about sports or Formula One every week. There are more meaningful things, that actually have a bearing on our lives as well. And it's really great to get Malik and Jay. Shout out to Jay as well, that was on here earlier too. So make sure you guys like, retweet, do everything for the algorithms, because that's what it's about these days. And until next time, it's been your usual co-host, AMG Dent, and I'm out. Peace.
Later.